Welcome to The Warm-Up, a Bailiwick Express podcast giving you an insight into the sports action that is on the horizon.
Mark Prevel will be doing what many consider unthinkable on Saturday the 8th of June, completing the Saffrey Rotary Walk 3 times in a row. Having battled with lung and other health conditions throughout his life, he made a physical and nutritional switch during the pandemic, which has transformed his life and led to several unbelievable running and walking accomplishments. I'm Kit Hanna, and we opened up our conversation by discussing his background and how he plans to complete the 100-mile circuit in under 2 days.
Yeah, just go back to mid-80s, I found out I had Crohn's disease. So that can be sort of, once I found out, it was more a case of your diet, because you can tire quite easily from it or whatever. I've done fairly well with that one. I've had part of my intestines removed due to it. But touch wood, I haven't really suffered as much as what other people have. So I sort of put myself on the lucky scale of when it comes to Crohn's disease. But the worst one was in the early 90s when I got diagnosed with chronic emphysema. And at that point, they didn't think I'd be around for very long. Luckily for me, they put me up to Packworth Hospital up in Cambridge. I then saw my a surgeon, a chap called Frank Wells, a very well-known chap. For me, I got assessed for this lung transplant, and for me, he'd just come back from Florida from a seminar and told me about this new procedure that he thought I was a likely candidate, partly because of my age, being 31, 32 at the time, and I still had the elasticity in my lungs. Luckily for me, it worked, but it wasn't that straightforward. The first stop I actually had, I got rushed to Addenbrooke's because Crohn's disease decided to flare up, and so they got me there as soon as possible. But over the course of a year or so, I had 3 major operations on my lungs, and so I'm actually here today, so I'm able to speak to you. And because if I'd had a lung transplant, I don't think I wouldn't be sat alongside you today.
Mm. And were you into endurance sport before you had those sort of challenges hit you, or was that sort of come out of your recovery and your kind of staying well since then?
No, I think before 2020, 2021, I think I started running in 2021. I think the only thing I might have ever run for is a boss. I've never. I will say that 2 of my older brothers, they are athletic. One's a marathon runner, and one, when he was a lot younger, was he was in the Commonwealth, so he was doing pretty well with himself. But no, I never had interest. I did as a young teenager, because elder brothers. I got into a bit of cross country and then motorcycles, and women came along, so basically that was the end of that. The classic one is that I got into running because one of my daughters passed me over a book, and it's called How Not to Die, and it's all to do with ailments and how to feed yourself right so you can actually get the best out of your life with what you've got. After looking at it and then going into a little bit more detail, one of my daughters is into a bit of nutrition, so she said, well, let's the Crohn's thing, let's get rid of dairy, because I was having quite a struggle. In 2020, the summer of 2020, it was getting a bit of a struggle because we were in lockdown. And what did you do in lockdown? You got bored, so you're eating. So my everything wasn't too good. So, like I say, at the end of that year, my daughter gave me this book, my 58th birthday. And then, from then, it was a case of I suddenly had this energy. So I started channeling it into hard walking. It was walking I started off with. And then it carried on from the end of 2020, because I've walked the cliffs for quite a few years with my daughter, and we'd usually do it in about 7-8 hours and then find the closest pub and have a pint of Guinness. That's what we do twice a year for a good 4 or 5 years. And then I thought, right, what I'll do is I'll walk, and then I'll see how fast I can walk the cliffs. And then I got to sort of 5 hours, and I thought, well, yeah, I've got this ability where I'm building up all this this energy. And then the beginning of 2021, I thought, right, from the beginning of the year, I'll go for a run, see how I get on. One of my older brothers, going back to him, Kevin, he gave me a bit of advice. He said to me, oh yeah, when you start off, just run a mile, walk a mile, take it easy. So I went out and I ran 5 miles, and I thought, all right, okay. Maybe it was about a 12, 13 minute pace, but it was what I classed in my head at that point, proper running. And then it slowly sort of built from that. Well, I say it slowly built from that. It was the 22nd, I remember the 22nd of February, I ran the cliffs, and I did it on just under 4 hours. And then 5 days later, we were still in lockdown actually, so I had to distance with somebody else, and they were my pacemaker, and I ran the half marathon in 2 hours 11. So I realised then that I've got the ability to do this. It's like a lot of people, they don't know they've got that until you try it. So I then started doing that. Then I think it was the next year, maybe the 22nd, 2022 I believe it was. I did my first actual run of a half marathon, which I did in 2 hours 22, I think that one, because the heat gets to me, and it was a warm day, so heart rate goes up because I've got lack of lungs. So it's a little bit of fun, a little bit of balance, but I was quite pleased to get the 2 hour 22. But now I believe if I did it now, I'd be under 2 hours, which I was sort of aiming to do in September. Hopefully I can do that one, if nothing's fallen off or bearings are seized or anything like that. So I'm doing quite well.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I suppose that first half you did, being able to achieve that time, what was the kind of feeling like, knowing that you'd just accomplished that with a relatively short running career?
Well, it was quite strange because I just got into this Garmin, and I hadn't got into Garmin yet. I think it was I got into the Strava. So of course I looked at it, and I was fairly amazed that every single mile there was a 10-second difference. I actually ran at a 10-minute mile, which was quite strange in the feeling that, I was that sort of in tune already that I could actually say, right, I can stick myself to a pace. And then we were looking within 8 weeks of starting to run. So I thought, well, at least I've got something here that I could sort of work on over the course of time. But my main thing that I was looking at that point was for raising funds. And obviously, it was all down to Papworth Hospital. So that's where I started. I set up a website, etc. And from there, it was a case of, I said to my son, because my son's a marathon runner as well, does marathons, Ironman, things like that. And I first said, I might do 2 marathons back to back. So basically he looked at me, he said, no, you can't do that. He said, that really is hard on your legs. You will, but you'll cause yourself an injury to it and that. So he said, look at something else. So anyway, my mind then went back to the cliffs. So I started churning things around in my head and what have you. On my Strava through my phone at that point, it was 3,000 feet. I found out that if you walk the length, you will climb and descend 3,000 feet of the cliffs, because it's roughly 15 miles. So I worked it all out, looked into it. So I decided to walk 10 lengths of the cliffs in 7 days. And in the course of time, up to and doing the actual challenge, I realised I could do it in 5, so I did it in 5 days. I found it fairly easy, not too difficult. I admire anybody who walks the lengths of the cliffs today, just off pat, because that is, I've done it, and it's quite a hard slog. But it's amazing how you can realise what you can get your body into. So once I'd done that, I walked that. I walked 100,000 steps. See how long it took me. It took me 14 hours. I walked 3 lengths of the cliffs. That took me 17 hours. So I've sort of set myself challenges all the way along. And each time I set a challenge, I just put it out and get a few quid in for Patworth Hospital. So now it's evolved a bit because it's Patworth Hospital, friends of Frossard for the children's ward, and Longevity, charity Longevity over here. So it's goals and goals and goals, and reading about all the different things and how people actually get into running or run. It's the goals you set. Every time you set yourself a goal is how you keep yourself going, because a lot of people get addicted to it, which I don't think I have. But it's a necessity. It's a necessity that you... because it's not just running, it's just not just for the body. It's amazing how your mind, how it clears the mind, how you work. People have said to me, how can you walk so many miles? And I say, it's amazing, because you could just clear your mind of everything. And then you just start calculating, and you might then come up with a subject that you then sort of calculate it. And your mind never stops.
And what are you thinking about when you're on these huge goals that you set yourself?
Most of it is your time perception, because the goal a lot of the time is I set it as a time. So you're then working out the process of, right, I've got X amount of miles at a pace of such and such, such and such. That's what a lot of it is. But when you're actually walking around Guernsey, you've just got to look at the scenery. And surprisingly, you then go back, like when I'm walking Pembroke, I go back to your childhood, and I remember being down at Pembroke. So you tend to, because you've cleared your mind of all the problems and all the worries, so you go back to what you used to do around certain parts of the island. That is a lot of things that I tend to think about when I'm walking. But a lot of it is working out where I'm to next. How long will it take me to the next stage? How long will it take me to get to the end? And giving me enough time to do whatever I want to be doing.
So you eventually set yourself a goal of walking a double rotary. But could you first tell me when you first did the rotary walk, just the standard 39-mile route?
When I did the first one, because the way I wanted to do it was I did the first one, then I walked with everybody. When I said, my son said to me, he said, I'll accompany you. So I said, yeah, if you want, that would be really good, because it's an overnight, because it would start at 5 p.m, obviously, because I wanted to get next day to start with everybody, because they start 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So I did say to him, I said, yeah, but it's a pace. We'll be working at a certain pace. Anyway, bless him, he managed to walk 32 miles, and he had to give up at Mullen Wet. And he said to me, when he got to the finish line the next day, he said, I didn't realise. But like he said, to run X amount of miles is a lot easier than to walk it, because you're on your feet so long. But now, when I got in, it was overnight, it was lovely. People say to me, do you want to be walking the cliffs at night time? But it's actually safer to walk or run the cliffs at night time than it is daytime. The only time I've stumbled or fallen over or done any damage to myself, funny enough, is in the daytime. And what it is, your mind's taken away from what you see. If you're nighttime, head torches on the path in front of you, when you're running or whatever, that's where there's nothing to distract you. So it is a safer place to be. It was quite an interesting walk, the first one, because it was just so quiet. Like I say, I've done the cliffs many times overnight and what have you when it's quiet, but even from 5 in the evening, once you actually get to Bordeaux, it's surprising how you're all away from everyone. Nobody's around. It was, although it was in June, it was a coldish evening, and nobody was sort of at beaches and what have you. And by the time you got to certain places, it was then coming dusk, and yeah, it was surprising how quiet the whole. And then for the next day, it's just all these orange T-shirts everywhere. It's quite amazing. But the classic one, and I had a meeting with that amazing chap that actually organises Safari Walk, Nick Dorring. And Nick, I told him that the first time I did the Safari Walk, which was last time, was I actually found a set of steps I never really, or didn't even know existed. Because I could see all these, they were like ants as I was coming round. I could see all these orange T-shirts walking down towards Saints Bay, and I'm thinking Saints Harbour, and I'm thinking, where are they going to? There's nothing down that way. And then I realised, because I used to cut off at the top of the road there at Saints and just carry on the cliff path, but you can't spot those steps coming down if you walk either way. You've got to come up the steps to know they actually exist. So I've added them to my, but it doesn't make any difference with the length, strange enough, but it's the hardest set of stairs to climb. So maybe my subconscious was telling me that, just stick with Djurberg steps, because, they are a classic one. Those I have to stop twice when I'm climbing those. Yeah, a little bit different.
Yeah, and then how did you come on to do the double? Because that is quite the undertaking. And how long did that take you?
People kept on to me, are you going to do the Safari Walk? Now, I've walked 45 miles on the cliffs continuously, which is, and then 36 miles to the Safari Walk. So this is not to knock anyone in any way, shape or form, but 36 miles around the island is a bit of a walk in the park. So it was a case of, I'll do the Safari Walk, but I'll do 2, because that's a decent goal for me to go to. So that's how it sort of started. And then it was a case of, I can't just walk the 2, I have to do something about it. So then the idea came up of doing the 2 in 24 hours. Because people said to me, you're going to run it, and you're going to run and walk or whatever. So I said, no, it's the Safari Walk. So my idea is to walk 2, not run it in any way. So that's how it sort of came down to that. Because if I actually did run one length, I'd probably be able to do it in about 8 hours, about 8.5 hours, if everything was working well. So yeah, that's what it all came down to. It was a case of, right, I'm now going to do the 2. I set myself a time of 24 hours. It was a bit of a shame, because when I did the actual Safari part, there were a few people that you then talk to, because you get to a level where everybody sort of slows and you're all at that same pace. So I got to a few people that I could talk with, but I couldn't socialise, because you couldn't stop in any way. I had to keep, because the Guff, it was packed with people. They're all having breakfast, and actually, as I came in, she said, "Oh, Mark, are you going to stop and have some breakfast?" So I looked at her and I said, "About 2 in 24 hours?" "Oh, no, okay," she said. So of course, I missed a lot of that. So this is why, this year I'm looking at it a little bit different. I'm looking at to go into it in a different way.
Amazing. Before we just get on to what you're attempting this year, what are the kind of challenges you came across when doing 2 back-to-back or within 24 hours?
Quite an interesting one. I've rectified it now. When I got to, on the first round, which I went north, and then did the cliffs on the last, is when I got to Fermain, I found out I had a blister on my heel. So I'm now thinking to myself, well, this is fun, because I've now got to do a whole round with a blister on my heel. I gave my good lady a shout. She does get up at 4:30 for whatever reason, most days anyway. So she came round, because it's a bit of an awkward one trying to put a blister plaster on the bottom of your foot.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know yourself, but when you've been walking continuously for 12 hours, when you actually sit and try and bend your legs, they cramp. That's why you've got to keep moving. Anyway, yeah, bless her. She came, she put this blister plaster on my foot. I then did the cliffs, which was quite uncomfortable. So the worst thing is, whenever you're an athlete, if you have discomfort, that's eating your energy. So when I got to the end of the cliffs, I thought, I've got to sort this out, I've got to do something with it. So I thought, with a blister plaster, it's an oval shape and it's sort of pushing into my heel. So I just asked for a plaster. I asked one of the St John's girls for a nice big square plaster on. I stuck that on. I took a paracetamol just to take the sting away a bit. By the end of it, I didn't even notice it was there. But it was no longer on my heel. It was actually up around my ankle. It had actually pushed it, and it was about the size of it was about the size of a tennis ball. It had actually come round and actually gone. So of course the fluid on the bottom of my heel was fine, and it wasn't sore anymore because it had actually pushed it all around. So it's like most ultra runners and people like that. The pain sort of, it only exists because you're thinking about it. You sort of go through it. So that was quite an opener for me, is to really make sure, which I've now learnt, how to get over the not getting blisters. It can work quite well.
And was that on the first lap?
So that was the first lap, yeah.
And then you still had another...
So I still had, at that point on the first lap, so looking at it, I still had about another 40 miles to go. So, yeah, but it's amazing. It doesn't matter what ailment, problem you get, you can sort of work yourself through it, unless you break something. But even ultra runners have strapped something up and carried on, because what's focused in your head is that goal, is that finishing line. Unless you're sort of drop dead, that they don't want to stop. They've got that goal, and they've put in so many miles. It's a case they just don't want to stop. But no, it was very comfortable. It got hot to the end of because that's right. I was doing the west coast, and I did have my son-in-law. He was a pacemaker for me, and it was quite helpful because it became quite cold and drizzly, and I haven't got a lot of flesh on my bones, and so I'd started getting cold, which then you start to surprisingly close down. Anyway, so I'm walking with him. My good lady then, because I give her a shout, and she got me a jacket, and that sort of warmed me up. And then I got to, it was to Pembroke, and then all of a sudden it's only 6 miles, because I knew exactly every point of the island, how many miles. And then, 6 miles, that was easy. That was the easiest miles I walked. You were just overtaking people, really comfortable. My dog joined me at Bordeaux, and I always remember as I came past the toilets at North Beach, Nigel Dorry's there, and he looks at me and he said, if I didn't know any better, he said, you've just walked your dog from the salary corner. He said, I've got people crawling in here. And he said, you just walk past as if. So when I did that one, when I did the two of them, there were points where it was a case of, what am I doing this for? But a lot of it at the end was, if I didn't have the thing on my heel, I could have just carried on. It was in my head. Because I was looking at sort of, I might just round up to 80 miles or something like that. Yeah, thanks for the medal, I'm just going to carry on now. So I felt like that. So that's why this year I sort of looked at just pushing it a little bit further and making that 100.
So what is exactly your goal then for this year?
The two goals. The main one is the 100 miles. I want to pass the 100 because just as the experience being able to do it. But the other one is this year I want to socialise with Safri. I want to be able to spend time with people and enjoy the atmosphere, because it's an amazing atmosphere with the amount of people that are doing it. But the first two rounds, which obviously I'll be doing before, is I'd like to run and walk, because I've always thought, to me the Safri walk is a Safri walk. And like they say, well, it's up to people if they run it or not, but in my head it's a Safri walk. So the first two, although it's to me it's not part of the Safri walk, is this time it's going to be an ultra for me as an ultra run, because if I can get the 2 under 10 hours, the actual ultra run as in Guernsey, it's got to be completed within the 10 hours. So that's sort of part of my goal, is to try and get the 2 done. I've even gone, which is a little bit amusing in one respect, is the good lady that looks after my legs, sports person, Carol Harvey. She also does Nordic pole walking. And she said to me, Mark, if you're going to be doing that, you need to get the knack of these things. But I said, but if when it's snowing, as we all do, we see people walking with these sticks, and well, it's not snow, why are they walking with sticks? So anyway, in the past, because of my sense of humour, I nicknamed them Lowry people, because they're stick people. Yeah. So I looked at her, I said, but I can't become a Lowry, and of course I got this look. And then she realised, but it is unbelievable. If you don't like gyms and you want to work out, walk the cliffs with Nordic sticks, and you'll feel every part of your upper body, because 90% of the muscles, it'll use 90% of the muscles in the body. My walking pace goes up by 2 minutes, so that will be quite an interesting one, because when I do this one, it'll be with Nordics, cliffs, the full works. I'll just walk normally, and then I'll do Nordic walking, so you vary. I do a bit of running, and I think I might find it easier because you're using all the different muscles. When you walk, you're just using just a small mobility, it's just little leg movements. But if you do a bit of running, a bit of Nordic walking, which is quite a stridey walk, it's surprising how you use all different types of muscles. Because that's one thing, is that when you just walk, you've got to stop every 5 miles, stretch yourself out, because that's how you can get caught quite easily. Yeah. Just got to run down a steep bank or something like that. You can get caught quite easily with tearing something you don't want to tear.
So you're mixing up with running and the Nordic sticks. Those are some of the changes you're making on the double. Is there anything else that you've had to consider? Anything else you're sort of dreading or quite mindful that you'll have to manage on doing the 100 miles?
Sleep deprivation. Yeah. That's the interesting one. I had no trouble with it last time. And obviously there was 24 hours short of. But this time I'm estimating, because when I do the Safri walk, I'm looking at sort of around 13, maybe even 14 hours that I could be walking, because I'll be stopping with people and whatever. So I'm looking in the region of around about 35 to 40 hours. The only thing, you might find me on a bench snoring off for 5-10 minutes, because it's quite easy to do. It's quite easy to just have 5 minutes just here and there. But my goal will be to see how long I can actually go without it. My diet is fairly strict, so I will be feeding myself some, quite unusual foods to sort of keep my energy level up. I will use gels on odd occasions. When you're doing lengths like that, you can only use every now and then. electrolyte drinks and what have you. So that would be the way that I'll try and keep the sleep at bay. My intention is, because when I do the safari walk, the third one, you do the cliffs first. So of course I know I'll be fine on that. It's when I hit the road and you're just what I class as then the mundane sort of walking, what have you, is that's when the tiredness sort of might hit me. But no, I think I'll manage all right. But if I do feel that I'm starting to get unsteady, then I'll just say, I'll just have a 10-minute kip just to see if I can get over. Because ultra people, it's unbelievable. They can do just 2 or 3 minutes, and that's enough. That just keeps them going enough for their next stop or whatever.
Amazing. Could you go into some of those unusual foods you were talking about on top of your gels and electrolyte? What have you found is really effective, particularly on the safari course?
Well, I'm looking at sort of taking in the protein. So one of the top one is the banana.
Yeah.
That's the main one. And funny enough, the clue actually holds is if you ever watch a game of tennis, the top people, that's what they do. That's their top up. They'll just have a bit of banana. You see them, and I've always noticed that. So that is a really good shot. The other one is I've experimented with it a little bit. Is avocados basically mixed with peanut butter. That's another one. I'll mix it together and with lentils. So basically a paste like that, you've got as much as you can sort of the fats and everything
very
else.
Very dense, yeah.
But something that you can process pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because I've read quite a bit of what not to eat, but that sort of thing is quite a dense hit, which I also make, like banana cakes. I make them. They've got sunflower seeds in, they've got oats and what have you, which I'll take a few of those. But yeah, I sort of worked out that's the sort of foods that I'll sort of be hitting myself with. But the good thing about the sort of mixture, more of a paste, is that you can just take a small amount at a time, and that's enough for you. You don't need to sort of be taking large quantities of food. You don't need to be stopping. Because that's one of the worst things, is to stop for too longer periods. You've got to be quite careful, because that's when you can start to seize and you can
lose your momentum.
Yeah.
Has anyone told you, obviously your son advised you to not do 2 marathons back to back? You've done the double Safari Rotary. Has anyone raised concerns about you attempting the triple, or are people actually, egging you on?
I think it's more that people, because I've progressed over the course of time, and people realise that, he's turned around and he's actually said he's going to do that, and he does it. He's going to do that, and he does it. If I can't do it, and I know I can't do it because, I've got this slight injury at the moment, so I was going to do the GU 36 the weekend, and I realised, no, that's it, I can't do that, so I won't even attempt it. So I know that I'm fit at that point. I've got the capabilities of doing it. So nobody's ever sort of said to me, my mother, obviously, when I say to her, my next challenge is, so the eyes roll. But she knows that, I'm one of 4 sons, and if we tend to say something, but not only that, I'm a Guernseyman, so I'm typically stubborn that, I've now said that, so I will be doing that. Because there's a lot of process, there's a lot of thinking and what have you into all these things that I do before it goes on Facebook, before it goes on anything, or before I put it out in any way, shape or form. Because once I've said it, that's it, I won't go back on it. I'll do it even if I have to get on the crutches and just finish doing what I'm doing. But I'll complete it, but as long as I can start it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If I've got an injury and I said, no, I'll wait till next year.
Have you adapted your training in any way for this triple you're about to attempt?
Nordic Sticks.
Yeah.
I'd say it's a Nordic Sticks. It was I started January with them. as an experiment, and I'd say it can knock half an hour off the time of covering the cliffs. Also for stability, because when you get old you get wobblier, so it's a bit like a 4x4. It's surprising how it does. When I did it in January, funny enough, the first time it was quite icy, and there was a couple of times I slipped and I thought, that's just saved me, because you've got your arm control as much as your foot control. So yeah, it does work quite well. It's a bit of a knack when it comes to running, because the way you use your arms and what have you, you've suddenly got these sticks involved. And because of our cliffs are quite undulation, there's a lot of steps, a lot of ups, downs, there's not much tarmac. So you have to have them in hand all the time. So yeah, it does make it a little bit more challenging from one side of it, but it actually, I'd say it's a safer form of covering the cliffs, that's for sure.
So obviously we're fast approaching the Safri Rotary Walk, and obviously there's a fundraising goal in mind here as well, which has evolved a bit. Have you got a goal, a target almost, for how much you'd like to raise for your chosen charities?
Because I've been doing this charity fundraising for quite a few years now, well, it's about 3 years, the charity side of it just comes along with me. Because although I do it, that I'd love to raise thousands and thousands, it tends to be sort of on the back. It's there, I put it out that it's the Safri Walk. I forget how many charities will be benefiting from this one. But last year I did quite well. It was about £400 I raised. Every time I do something, it's about £400, £500. When I did the marathon a few weeks ago, that was almost £500 I raised on that one. So it's nice, but my main aim is my goal, is my challenge. If I had the time, but yeah, a lot of my time is taken up with family and work commitments. If I was retired, I would actually put more time into actually sort of making awareness of the charity side. But yeah, the main one is with this is that I've spoken with Nigel Dorry and Simon Milstead from the Rotary, is that I would like, over the course of years, because I intend to do the Safri Walk, but with a twist each time, is that it starts to get more awareness for them, and that builds the charity status and gets the money in that way. But for myself, it's nice that people, it's nice that people actually donate through my own bit for the Safri Walk. But more, I find it's more at the moment. It's more for me is getting myself out there, getting myself noticed. Yeah. So that people, because I'm walking along the road. The classic one was the other day. I was on the cliff with my daughter, doing the Nordic sticks, and then a couple came up to me. Oh, Mark, you're using them. That's what I get. I was me walking along the road, and somebody said, quite a few times, somebody will come up to me and say, "Oh, you've really inspired me to get onto the Safri or to get out walking or whatever." So the more I get noticed, that it doesn't matter what you've been through in your life, that people can move on. And a classic one is, I don't know if you had any involvement with it, is the going to literature, is I've just read his book, Richard Asquith's, and when you read it, it sort of puts me in that category. You should never dismiss what you're capable of doing. And like me, I believe I've got a bit of a gift that I can actually get up, which I usually get up at 3 o'clock every day, and try and get a lot of my exercise time out of the way, so I then got my full day. So, yeah, it's unbelievable how you can actually get yourself up and running and motivate other people, because other people sort of hear about it or whatever. But the classic one is coming back to the charity side. The main thing is that it gets noticed, but to do the Safari walk, it was a brilliant experience, although I had to shoot through it last year. But yeah, the time and effort those guys put into actually putting that together and making it run the way it is. I'd say when I was walking last year on the Safari bar, I reckon I was asked at least 10 times if I was okay, and it was everything okay. And it wasn't just because of what I was doing. Everybody's treated that way.
Yeah.
That they really look after you. They really sort of, they really drive you on. But yeah, with your safety in mind, it's a fantastic, well-organised walk.
Yeah, absolutely. So that must be great to hear, you know, people seeing you out on the cliffs and recognising you, and also being inspired. So I suppose part of the inspiration must be for you is that obviously your health problems that we discussed earlier. How has the sort of endurance, the walking, the running, all this physical activity sort of benefited you?
For the first, the instant is the strength of my legs, because my legs have become so much stronger that I don't get out of breath so much. To give you a little bit of an idea how my day-to-day can be affected by it, if I eat a large meal, our bedroom is 2 stories up. So if I eat a large meal, then I try and walk 2 stories up. When I get upstairs, I'm out of breath. So it's quite an interesting on how it sort of balances your life, and how you I think a way that I've learnt a lot about it is the same old, you Google it, is how can I, because I'm lack of lungs and I struggle in this certain way, how can I actually get over that? So of course with this fitness regime, the legs are a lot stronger, but how can I actually make my body function a lot better than what it does? So I went into a woman called Rhoda Patrick. She's a biologist, and that's quite fascinating because it starts going to DNA and how it affects certain areas of the body when you're eating certain foods and this sort of thing. A chap called Michael Greger, who wrote the book on how not to die. So I sort of studied that side of it and what have you. So now, what I eat, which is quite regimental daily, is how it affects my body, how it helps your breathing, blood circulation, keep my blood a little bit thinner because I'm getting older. So I've found all the certain things. I actually have a smoothie that's got, it's greener than green. It doesn't look like the most tastiest smoothie going, but it actually has kale, spinach, fresh ginger, fresh turmeric. It has yeast flakes because of vitamin B12 from the yeast flakes, because I've got Crohn's, so that's bombarded, that helps me digest things. I can never remember the name of it, but it's an algae, it's a superfood. And I can't, it's spinal or whatever it is. So that's added because it's a superfood, which really sort of helps me. Cannellini beans. This is a classic one, you like this one. Pineapple, but I don't like pineapple. But how that came about is going back to the Google it, read books, everything. One of the world's top ultra runners, and what he eats and how he eats, and he came up with pineapple, and he gave the reasons why. I can't tell you straight off, but he said that was one of the big things that he would eat. So I thought, all right, okay. So that goes in the smoothie, but to be honest, the taste isn't as strong, but it's like a childhood thing that you never liked it as a child,
Yeah.
so you never. But now, yeah. So that goes in cannellini beans because it's more proteins, and a kiwi. So that actually goes in as it's got a quite an acquired taste, but yeah, the spinach is very good for breathing. The kale, vitamin D, the darker stuff I can get hold of. So that is a litre a day. I'll consume that. So I'm taking that. I eat pulses mainly. I'm certainly not vegan, but mostly what I eat is fruit and vegetables.
Whole plant-based food.
Yeah, it's mainly whole plant-based. But on a Sunday, because it's just me and my good lady at home, if she makes a roast, I'll eat whatever she makes. But every other day is exactly the same. Dinner time, it tends to be avocado, Marmite. That is involved because Marmite's got vitamin B12, and the good old peanut butter. But yeah, and it all tends to all the things that I've read about and looked into. But a lot of the things that I've picked up, like I say, is through books.
Yeah.
And Google.
So I presume your diet wasn't always so regimented.
No, because I've found a perfect, because things come and things go.
Yeah.
Mainly, what I have now is there to stay, and I can get up at 3:00 and I still can be going 8-9 o'clock in the night. And I'm starting to feel a little tired, but I'm not that bad. And at the age of 60 odd, it's not bad going really.
And you've noticed a step change from your diet, would you say, in terms of the physical effects and in terms of your performance in walking?
Yeah, there's a few days that sometimes I might say the good lady's made a cake or something like that, so I have that and have something else, and then I have something else. Oh yeah, I bet I have too much. And the next day, you're groggy, you're not as clear. You can really notice a difference because mine's regimental 6 days a week. It is quite noticeable how it does affect your fitness level.
Amazing. I suppose I'd like to end really by, obviously you've discussed the health issues you had early on in your life and how you've gone from not really running or being active very often to having this incredible list of achievements and still going with these goals. This year, who knows what will be next year, but I suppose we'll finish the triple first. So what would you say to people who think that they can't do this because you obviously didn't realise or didn't appreciate the gift, as you put it, until you actually sort of took the leap and made the effort to get out there and try something?
Yeah. In life, we all go through, well, the way we are in the Western world, we all tend to go through the same thing. We're brought up into a family. We're then expected to move on, have a family, go through that process. But what people sort of forget about is there's so much more pressures today. There's a lot more going on. People of my generation tend to sort of think that people today fill their minds with too much. Basically because there's so much information being bombarded at you, which is the worst thing, which is the most difficult thing. But it's better off if you can just get away from it, if you can just sort of switch off from it and get out. I'm very lucky because I love the weather. The wetter, the rougher, the windier, that's my end of it. Summers I don't like, but getting out there and actually moving around, and it doesn't take a lot. But once you actually start doing something, and you get, you just get your head around it and you get involved in it, it's amazing how you can evolve from it and actually find out that you have a certain ability to actually do something. Going back to the book about Richard Asquith, what he's just written about running in later life, you've got people who started running in their 70s. And now they're actually, because they had such hard lives, they were so busy. And then they feel all those years that they missed and what they might have been capable of doing. But that's the way life is we get certain areas of our lives where we find, I've got a little bit of time, I can actually sort of do this. But it's more finding time while you're in that family environment, etc., is to put that phone down. Because if you work out how long somebody will be on their phone and flicking through their phone, they could have gone for a nice half hour, maybe an hour walk, and then realise how fitter they actually start to get. My average step at the moment is roughly 20,000 a day, which to me isn't a great deal. My biggest amount in 24 hours is 155,000, you can imagine. My longest it was a 17-hour period, that was 110,000. But it's all you need. They have this stipulation of 10,000 steps, which just came along because it helped to sell watches and what have you. That's why that 10,000 came along. But the average person will walk somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000. So even just joking aside, getting out and just starting to look at your steps, because we can all do that now, so that's all available. Just get the motivation to get out there, because all of a sudden you might think, I'm getting very good at this. And if you get very good at something, you enjoy it. But the best thing about the book that Richard wrote is one elderly woman said, the competitor that you are competing against is the person that you see in the mirror. You must never sort of aspire to somebody. Your goal is what you set your goal. Not that you're trying to be better than somebody else, you're just trying to be better than yourself. And that's the only direction that you need to go in.
Amazing. Well, Mark, thank you very much for coming in, and best of luck with the triple attempt, which is on I suppose you're starting on the 7th of June, will you?
Yeah, around about half 8 on the 7th in the morning. If I've got a slight injury or something, I might add half an hour or whatever. But yeah, no, I think everything will be good, and just hopefully it's not too warm for me, but hopefully it's warm for them.
Yeah. And if people would like to donate to you, how is the best way they should do that?
For me, is to go on my Facebook, Mark Prevel, and just actually go on it on my post, because you'll find a link there straight to the Safri site. But yeah, it's that's the easiest way of doing it. I have a website, but I don't have it on that. I've got the other ones on my website, but at the moment the main one is the Safri one. That's the one that I'm doing at the moment. So that's the best way to donate to me. Or you can go straight on the Safri site and actually donate directly to the Safri, because these guys, every penny that goes on there goes to charity. Yeah. Because everything they have is sponsored. It's sponsored by somebody. So every penny that people put into this, goes directly to the chosen charities.
That was the warm-up. Thanks again for listening. Please like and subscribe for more. You can find all our sports news on gsy.bailiwickexpress.com and on all our social channels. Sign up to our daily email to keep up to date on all the work the Express team does.